The cold wind drifted through the cemetery, brushing fallen leaves across the cracked marble stones as dusk swallowed the last bit of daylight. And that was when he saw her knelling in front of his father's grave, her arms wrapped protectively around three small children whose wide, curious eyes stared at the carved name as if they understood grief far too well for their age. And from the moment he stepped closer, his breath hitched, because he'd never seen them before, never seen her before, never imagined anyone would be visiting the grave of Leonard Harrington, one of the richest, most feared business tycoons in the city at this hour, whispering words that carried a mix of heartbreak and guilt. "What are you doing at my father's grave?" he demanded, his voice slicing through the silent air. And the woman jerked her head up, her tear-streaked face illuminated by the faint glow of a dying sun, revealing exhaustion, fear, and something even deeper, something like old secrets buried beneath years of pain she'd carried alone. The three little ones, the triplets, clung to her dress as if he were a threat. And for a moment he almost softened, but then he remembered the lawsuits. The vultures who wanted his father's money, the liars who showed up with fabricated claims after his death, and so his jaw hardened. She struggled to stand, forcing a shaky breath into her lungs before speaking. But whatever she said sounded like fragments of a confession, and his pulse quickened because why did it sound like she knew his father, truly knew him, not as the ruthless billionaire the world saw, but as someone else entirely? The cemetery lights flickered on, casting long shadows across her face, and he noticed how she shielded the children instinctively, like she expected him to lash out. He wasn't sure why that bothered him. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice raw. "I didn't think anyone would be here." But that wasn't an answer, not to him, not to a man who'd spent the last month drowning in unanswered questions about his father's secretive final year. The sudden disappearances from home, the private phone calls, the locked office drawers he still couldn't bring himself to open. "That isn't what I asked," he said, stepping closer. And she immediately stepped back, clutching the nearest child to her chest. The triplets were beautiful, brown-skinned, identical except for the smallest girl who had a tiny birthmark near her eyebrow. Something inside him twisted unexpectedly, because they looked like they belonged to her completely. Yet there was something faintly familiar in one of their faces that he couldn't place. He told himself he was imagining it. "Why are you here? And why with children?" He pushed again, but she bit her lip, hesitating, torn between fleeing and telling the truth. The wind picked up again, cold enough to make the children whimper, and without thinking he shrugged off his coat, offering it, but she refused, her pride stiff and determined, despite the chill. "You shouldn't be here alone," he muttered, partly annoyed, partly confused. "It's not safe at night." She laughed under her breath, a broken, humorless sound. "Safe stopped mattering to me a long time ago." He stared at her, trying to decipher her meaning, but before he could question her again, one of the boys tugged at her sleeve, pointing at the grave. "Mommy," the little one whispered, "is this where She hushed him quickly, too quickly, and the millionaire froze. "Grand what? Grandfather? Grand something else." His heartbeat stumbled. "What did he say?" he asked sharply, but the woman straightened, shaking her head. "They're just confused. They've been through a lot. Please, let us go." She tried to gather the children, but he stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Not until you explain what you meant," he insisted, tension rising between them like heated smoke. Her eyes glistened with tears. She was clearly fighting to contain, and when she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "Your father helped me once. A long time ago." That startled him. His father, Leonard Harrington, helping someone, a struggling single mother? Impossible. Leonard was known for saving corporations, not people. He was known for crushing rivals, not rescuing strangers. "You're lying," the millionaire snapped. "My father didn't do that. You're just another person trying to. I'm not here for money," she cried, the outburst echoing off the polished gravestones. The children flinched, and she quickly knelt to comfort them. Her hands were gentle, practiced, filled with a kind of warmth he never received growing up despite living in mansions. Something about that contrast made him uneasy. He watched her soothe the children until they calmed, and his annoyance began folding into something far more complicated: curiosity, mixed with a strange, crawling dread. When she stood again, her eyes met his, fearless despite the fear she carried. "Your father saved my life," she said softly, "and theirs, too." The words hit him like a blow, and suddenly he understood the type of storm this night was turning into. But he still didn't understand how, why, or what exactly she owed his father. "You need to leave," he said, rubbing a hand over his tense jaw. "This is turning into some kind of—" "He told me never to find you," she interrupted, and he froze. "He told me never to come near you, never to let the children know about him until the time was right." His stomach dropped, cold crept up his spine. "What time?" he asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. She looked at the grave, her expression full of unspoken words. "Until he was gone." Another hit, another twist of the knife. "You're lying," he repeated, but this time he didn't sound sure. She reached into her worn bag, her fingers shaking slightly, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He recognized the handwriting instantly, up, angular, firm, his father's. Every letter a reminder of a man he admired and hated in equal measure. When she handed it to him, he hesitated, as though touching it would make everything unbearably real. but eventually he unfolded it. The letter was addressed not to him but to her, and as he read the first few lines, his blood ran cold. It spoke of protection, of promises, of things left unfinished, of a woman whose life Leonard claimed to owe a debt that could never be repaid, of 3 children he referred to as miracles he would guard from the shadows. His hands shook, his breath stilled. This couldn't be happening. Explain, he demanded, though his voice was cracking. The woman swallowed hard, hugging the triplets close as though bracing for the world to turn against her again. Your father saved me from someone dangerous, she began, her voice distant, like she was falling into old memories. A man who wanted me dead because I knew too much? Your father happened to be there. He didn't plan it. He didn't know me, yet he stepped in. He took a bullet that was meant for me. He almost died. The millionaire blinked, stunned. His father had been shot years ago. That part was true. He had always assumed it was a robbery, a coincidence, not part of someone else's nightmare. After that, she continued, tears spilling despite her attempts to contain them, he made sure I was safe. He moved me, helped me get medical care, protected me from the man who was hunting me. And when the triplets were born, he said they deserved a life untouched by the darkness I escaped and the enemies he made. The children blinked at him with large, innocent eyes, unaware of the storm swirling around them. Why would he do that? The millionaire whispered, not sure he wanted the answer. She hesitated. Because he cared. He shook his head. My father did not care about anyone except his empire. He cared about these children, she insisted, her voice cracking. He promised to keep us safe. But he also warned me that the man who wanted me dead might still be looking, and if he discovered your father helped me, he might target you, too. A chill crawled through his bones. This was getting too big, too dark, too fast. He told me to stay away from your family, she whispered, until he wasn't here to protect you anymore. The millionaire stared at his father's name carved into the stone, his mind racing through memories that suddenly felt incomplete. Strange late-night calls, secret meetings, unexplained bruises, the way his father locked his office whenever he approached. But before he could piece the puzzle together, a sharp crack echoed from the trees like a branch snapping under heavy boots. The woman stiffened instantly, fear tightening her grip on the children. We need to leave, she breathed. They found us. Who? The millionaire demanded, stepping protectively in front of them, despite himself. Her voice trembled. The man your father saved me from, he's back. The answer punched the air from his lungs. Darkness seemed to thicken around them, and another sound closer this time made one of the triplets start crying. The mother clutched them desperately, her body shaking, and then the millionaire saw it movement behind the graveyard fence. A silhouette, watching, waiting. The children whimpered. The woman whispered something like a prayer, and in that single, terrifying moment, he understood one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever hidden world his father was tangled in, it wasn't over. Not for him, not for her, not for the children, and now because he found them it had become his world too. The moment the shadow shifted behind the graveyard fence, a cold dread seeped into the millionaire's bones. The kind of dread that didn't ask questions but screamed run, and as the woman grabbed the triplets' hands and tried to pull them away, he found himself moving to Evan, though moments earlier he hadn't trusted her. Now some instinct, more ancient than logic, told him that danger was not a metaphor. It was here, breathing down their necks. The wind pressed the dry leaves against the marble gravestones like a warning whisper, and when another crack echoed closer, sharper, unmistakably the sound of someone stepping out of cover, he reached for the woman's arm, steadying her when her knees nearly buckled from fear. The triplets clung to her desperately, their eyes wide and shimmering with confusion, and the smallest girl hid her face against her mother's leg as the millionaire scanned the dark line of trees bordering the cemetery, searching for movement. His heart slammed against his ribs with enough force to break something. We need to get to my car, he whispered harshly, and though the woman hesitated, torn between fear and mistrust, another rustle from the shadows pushed her into motion. They hurried across the uneven ground, the children stumbling over roots and loose stones, the mother whispering urgently for them not to cry, not to make sound, not to slow down. The millionaire stayed near them, his head spinning. How, in one night, had he gone from mourning his father to sprinting through a cemetery with a woman who claimed his father saved her life, and 3 children whose existence threatened every belief he had about the man who raised him? The sky had gone fully dark now, the moon sliding behind clouds as though even it didn't dare witness what was unfolding. Just as they reached the iron gate, a sharp, cold voice sliced through the air like a blade. Going somewhere? It wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. The quiet malice in the tone froze them instantly. The millionaire spun around to see a man step out from behind the old mausoleum near the fence. He was tall, dressed in black, his face partially obscured by the hood of his coat, but his eyes cold, calculating, unblinking, glinted in the faint cemetery lights. The woman gasped, instinctively pulling the children behind her, her whole body trembling. The man smiled, the kind of slow, cruel smile that made the millionaire's stomach twist. I told you I'd find you, the stranger said, his voice smooth as poison. The millionaire stepped in front of them without thinking, fists clenched, but the man didn't seem concerned. Leonard isn't here to protect you anymore, the stranger continued, tilting his head slightly, mocking, and now you've dragged his son into this? How ironic. That single sentence hit the millionaire like a punch. Whoever this man was, he wasn't just a random threat. He knew his father, knew him enough to speak his name with a venomous familiarity. The triplets whimpered, huddling against their mother, and she choked out a plea. Please, just leave the children alone. The stranger lifted his hand slightly, as if admiring his gloves. I have no interest in the children, he said. They were never the problem. He took a step forward, and the millionaire shifted, blocking him a little more firmly, though a part of him screamed at how unprepared he was for this kind of confrontation. The stranger studied him for a long moment, then let out a soft, amused sigh. Leonard's son? You look like him. The millionaire's jaw clenched. You knew my father. The man's smile widened. Oh, we had history. He got in my way once. Just once. And look how much it cost him. The millionaire felt something dark tighten in his chest. Was this the man who shot his father? The questions burned inside him, but there was no time to ask. The stranger moved suddenly, fast, too fast, and reached into his coat. The woman screamed. The millionaire grabbed her arm and shoved her and the children behind the nearest headstone as something metallic gleamed under the dim light. Run, he shouted, pushing them toward the gate. The stranger lunged forward, but the millionaire stepped into his path, tackling him with a force he didn't know he possessed. They hit the ground hard, skidding across dead grass and dirt. Pain shot through the millionaire's shoulder as the stranger swung at him, but he dodged narrowly, adrenaline roaring in his ears. The man was stronger than he looked, far stronger, and his movements were precise, practiced, almost professional. The millionaire realized with a jolt that this man wasn't just a criminal. He was trained. You fight like an amateur, the stranger hissed, pinning him briefly before the millionaire twisted free. Your father at least had skill. Something fierce and protective surged inside the millionaire, and he struck back, landing a punch that barely fazed the stranger, but bought him a second to scramble away. Behind them, the woman was pulling the triplets through the gate, sobbing as she begged them to run faster. The stranger noticed and stood quickly, wiping blood from his lip, annoyance flashing across his face. I don't have time for this nonsense. He reached for the weapon again. Before he could pull it free, the millionaire hurled himself forward, grabbing the man's arm. They struggled violently, grappling in the dark, feet dragging through grass and gravel until the sound of a horn blaring far down the road startled them both. The cemetery gates were now open, the woman waving frantically at a passing car, screaming for help. The stranger cursed under his breath and shoved the millionaire away with surprising force. This isn't over, he growled. You've inherited more than your father's wealth. You've inherited his enemies. With one last chilling look, he disappeared into the darkness beyond the mausoleum, leaving the millionaire gasping on the ground, heart pounding, mind spinning. He pushed himself up, stumbling toward the gate, and by the time he reached the road, the stranger was long gone. The woman collapsed against the fence, clutching her children as they cried into her arms. When she saw the millionaire approaching, her expression was a storm of guilt, fear, and something close to devastation. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't want you involved. I didn't want him to find you. Too late, he muttered, trying to catch his breath. The stranger's words echoed in his skull like a curse. You've inherited his enemies. The woman wiped her tears, her hands trembling. He won't stop, she whispered. Not now, not ever. He wants to erase anyone connected to what happened that night. The millionaire leaned against the gate, trying to steady his thoughts while the world tilted wildly beneath him. You need to tell me everything, he said. All of it. No more half-truths. She shook her head, panicked. Not here, not where he can find us. The triplets whimpered again, huddled so close together they looked like one trembling knot of fear. The millionaire looked at them, then at her, and something shifted inside him, something heavy, unfamiliar, something like responsibility. Come with me, he said softly. She hesitated. I can't put you in more danger. He looked toward the shadows where the stranger had vanished. I think I'm already in danger, and if my father risked his life to protect you, then I'm not walking away. Her lips trembled, and for the first time there was the faintest flicker of relief in her eyes. Okay, she whispered. Okay. They hurried to his car, the children bundled together in the back seat, their little hands clinging to each other tightly. The woman sat beside them, still shaking. The millionaire drove through the dark, empty streets, headlights cutting through the fog that had begun settling over the city like a shroud. Silence stretched between them, thick with unanswered questions neither of them knew how to begin addressing. Finally, the millionaire spoke, his voice low and steady. Tell me who that man is. The woman inhaled deeply, her gaze fixed on the sleeping triplets. His name is Marcus Vale, she whispered. And he's not just dangerous, he's powerful. The kind of man who hides behind clean business deals and charity donations while people disappear in the shadows. The millionaire's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Why was he after you? Her voice grew small. Because I saw something I wasn't supposed to. Something that could destroy him. And your father? He stepped in. He saved me without thinking. Without knowing me, he hid me, protected me. And when the children were born, he said they deserved a life far away from Marcus's reach. The millionaire swallowed hard. But my father didn't tell me anything. He couldn't, she whispered. It would have put you in danger. Marcus doesn't forget, and he definitely doesn't forgive. The city lights grew brighter as they left the cemetery behind, but the weight of darkness still clung to them. Why come to his grave now? The millionaire asked quietly. Her answer was barely audible. Because I heard a rumor that Marcus was back in the city. I needed to say goodbye to your father. He was the only reason we survived this long. They reached the millionaire's home, a large mansion with tall iron gates that closed behind them with a solid, protective thud. Inside the safety of the foyer's warm lights, the woman seemed smaller somehow, exhausted, overwhelmed, but still holding her children close. The millionaire watched them, wondering how his life had transformed into this moment, a stranger in his house. Triplets curled up on his expensive rug, and a woman whose past was tangled with secrets his father never shared. You can rest here tonight, he said softly. All of you. The woman met his eyes, gratitude trembling in her voice. Thank you. But just as he turned toward the security panel to lock the house down, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. 3 words. You shouldn't have interfered. His blood ran cold. He slowly lifted his gaze to the woman, who saw the terror on his face and immediately pulled the children close. And in that heavy, breathless silence of his grand foyer, they both realized the same horrifying truth. Marcus already knew where they were. The moment the millionaire read those 3 words, you shouldn't have interfered, a tremor of cold fear shot through him. But he hid it quickly as the woman tightened her hold on the triplets, her breath coming fast and shallow, her eyes darting toward every shadow in the massive foyer, as if Marcus could emerge from any of them. Because the truth was simple and horrifying. Marcus Vale was not a man who threatened without intention. He was a man who announced what he was already putting into motion, and now that he knew their location, every ticking second felt like a countdown to something catastrophic. The millionaire locked the doors, activated every alarm, enabled every motion sensor and camera feed. But even as the house sealed itself like an armored vault, anxiety gnawed at his insides because Marcus had resources, contacts, mercenaries, and most dangerously, a hatred sharpened by years of evading justice. He guided the woman and children to a safer room in the house, a large living space with soft lighting, where the triplets finally let out tiny sobs of exhaustion, fear, and confusion. The woman knelt with them, whispering that they were safe now, that nothing would happen, but her voice trembled, betraying the truth she didn't dare speak, that they were far from safe, and the night was far from over. The millionaire paced the room, his thoughts spinning, everything in him torn between fury at the situation and a fierce protective instinct that he never knew he possessed until tonight. He can't get in here, he said, more to reassure himself than her. The house is secure. We'll be fine. The woman looked up at him with haunted eyes. Marcus never comes alone. He sends others first. People who blend in. People who slip past security without being noticed. A chill spread across the millionaire's spine. He checked the window, then the hallway, then every camera feed on his phone. Nothing. But the silence was too thick, too expectant, as if danger were coiling somewhere nearby, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. You need to tell me everything my father knew, he said finally. Every detail, because if I don't understand what I'm dealing with, I can't protect you. She swallowed hard and nodded, pulling the triplets onto the couch beside her. One boy fell asleep against her arm, the girl curled up at her side, the other boy staring with wide, terrified eyes. The millionaire sat opposite her, leaning forward as she began to unravel a story that changed everything he thought he knew about his father. Years ago, she said, her voice low and trembling, I worked for Marcus Vale, not by choice. He ran a consulting agency, but that was just a cover for laundering money and making deals that destroyed people's lives. I realized what he was doing when I found documents I wasn't supposed to see, transactions tied to disappearances, payments tied to violence. When he found out I knew, he decided to eliminate me. Her breath hitched. On the night he tried to end my life, I ran. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran. And your father was there. He pulled his car over when he saw me bleeding and terrified. He didn't ask questions. He just acted. He shielded me. He got me to safety. And for months, he hid me, protected me, helped me disappear. She wiped her tears. He risked everything. And when the triplets came, he said they deserved peace, a chance, a future. The millionaire's chest tightened painfully. Why didn't he tell me? To protect you, she whispered. He said, Marcus was watching him. He said, if Marcus learned you were helping me, he'd come after you too. So your father kept his distance. But he never stopped checking on us. The millionaire slowly exhaled, his heart aching in a way he hadn't felt since the funeral. All his life he had seen his father as cold, distant, obsessed with business, but now he realized there were entire parts of the man he never knew. Entire acts of bravery and compassion that had been hidden in the shadows for the sake of protecting them all. Before he could speak, a shrill alarm suddenly pierced the air, the motion detector at the back entrance. The woman jumped, clutching the children as the millionaire grabbed his phone, checking the security feed. His blood turned to ice. A man dressed in dark clothing stood outside the sliding glass doors, his face hidden behind a mask, His posture relaxed in a way that said he wasn't afraid of getting caught. A second figure appeared. Then a third. "We need to move," the millionaire said urgently, rushing to them. "Now?" The woman stood quickly, trying to wake the sleeping child gently, but fear made her hands clumsy. The triplets started to cry again, overwhelmed and frightened. The millionaire pressed his finger to his lips. "We need to stay quiet." He led them down a hallway to the panic room hidden behind a sliding bookshelf. One his father had installed years ago, another puzzle piece that fit differently now. Another sign his father wasn't just protecting his empire, but preparing for a threat he could never speak about. Inside the panic room was a secure communication system, bulletproof walls, and enough supplies to last 4 days. But the moment they entered, the woman grabbed his arm, panic rising in her voice. "If Marcus's men are here, Marcus is close. He always watches." He locked the door. "Good, let him watch. Let him try." But even as he said it, the pounding on the distant glass door echoed through the house, followed by the shattering crash of breaking windows. The sound of footsteps, heavy, calculated. Inside the panic room, the triplets whimpered and buried their faces against their mother. Silence settled again, but this silence was far worse. This was the silence of wolves moving through shadows. The millionaire watched the monitors as the masked intruders searched the house, their movements swift and methodical. One of them spoke, his voice muffled. "He's here somewhere. Check all rooms. Marcus wants the woman and the kids." The millionaire's stomach knotted with rage. They were no longer threatening, they were hunting. And his home, once a fortress, had become their territory. The woman trembled, rocking the children gently, whispering comfort she didn't believe. "He's here," she whispered. "Marcus is here." And then, as if summoned by her fear, the main hallway camera flickered, and Marcus Vale stepped into view. He moved like someone who already owned the place, calm, confident, assured, his hands clasped behind his back, a thin smile on his face as he surveyed the millionaire's living room with casual boredom. Then he looked directly at the nearest camera, as if greeting an old friend, and leaned in slightly. "You can't hide from me forever," Marcus said smoothly, his voice dripping with dangerous patience. "You have something that belongs to me, and I always take back what's mine." The woman squeezed her eyes shut, tears falling silently. "He won't leave," she whispered. "Not until he gets us." Millionaire stared at Marcus on the monitor, something burning deep inside him. Anger, protectiveness, a fire he didn't recognize but welcomed. "He isn't getting you," the millionaire said firmly. "Not while I'm alive." Marcus continued down the hall, inspecting the house, smirking at the chaos his men had created. And then, the monitor glitched again. When it cleared, Marcus was no longer alone. In front of him, placed deliberately on the floor, as if being presented, was a photograph. The millionaire leaned closer, eyes narrowing. The photo was of his father, alive, young, standing with Marcus, both shaking hands at a business event, smiling like old allies. The millionaire felt his stomach twist violently. What did that mean? How deep did their connection run? Before he could process it, Marcus looked at the camera again. "Your father and I started together," he said. "Before he betrayed me. Before he took something from me." The millionaire's breath caught. "What did he take?" Marcus suddenly leaned closer to the camera. "Her." The woman stiffened. The millionaire's heart nearly stopped. Marcus smiled, slow and venomous. "And now, I've come to take her back." The woman shook her head violently. "No, no. He didn't take me. He saved me. He saved my children." "Marcus?" "Marcus killed their father." The millionaire froze. "Their father?" The woman covered her mouth, realizing what she had revealed. The triplets clung to her tightly. The millionaire's heart hammered painfully in his chest as he whispered, "Who is their father?" Tears streamed down her face, her voice cracking as she answered the question she had kept buried for years. "Marcus. Marcus is their father." The millionaire felt the world tilt. The children? Marcus's children, the ones Leonard Harrington had risked everything to protect. Marcus's furious obsession suddenly made horrifying sense. Marcus wasn't just hunting a witness. He was hunting his own blood children he had never known existed. Children who could expose him. Children who represented the one time he truly lost control. On the monitor, Marcus suddenly stopped walking. He looked at the nearest door, tilting his head as if listening. His eyes narrowed, and then he smiled. He found the panic room entrance. The millionaire grabbed a metal bar from the emergency kit, gripping it tightly as the door outside echoed with the unmistakable sound of drilling. The woman hugged the triplets tightly, whispering prayers through her tears. The drilling grew louder. Sparks flew on the monitor. The lock shook violently. The millionaire stepped between the family and the door, his jaw set with a resolve he had never felt before. "If he wants you," he said quietly, "he'll have to go through me." The woman sobbed. The triplets cried. The drilling stopped. Silence. Then a thunderous crash shook the entire room. The door dented inward. Another crash. Another. The metal buckled. The millionaire lifted the bar. "Ready?" The woman covered the children. The lock snapped. Light bled through. And then the alarm outside the panic room suddenly screamed. Footsteps thundered. Voices shouted. A new force stormed the house. Police had activated a silent emergency alarm earlier. Marcus's men scrambled. Marcus turned sharply. The panic room door cracked open, just an inch, and a uniformed officer's voice shouted, "Hands in the air." The millionaire yanked the door open fully, rushing out as Marcus attempted to flee through the back. Officers swarmed the hall, weapons raised. The women and children were escorted out safely. Marcus fought like a cornered animal, but he was outnumbered. Within minutes, he was forced to the ground, handcuffed, and dragged away screaming death threats that fell powerless into the night. The millionaire watched, breathing hard, as Marcus was shoved into a police car, still shouting promises of revenge that no longer mattered, because it was over. Finally, impossibly, over. When the danger cleared, the woman approached him slowly, the triplets holding her hands. She looked exhausted, broken, relieved all at once. "Your father," she whispered, trembling. "He saved us. And tonight, so did you." The millionaire shook his head softly. "My father didn't save you alone. He left me the chance to do the same." The triplets hugged his legs suddenly, their small arms tight, trusting, grateful, and something warm cracked inside him, something like the beginning of a new story he never expected. The woman wiped her tears. "What happens now?" He looked at her hurriedly, looked at her and felt the weight of choice settle into something solid. "Now," he said, "you're safe. And you're not running anymore. Not from him, not from anything." Outside, police lights faded. The night finally breathed again, and the millionaire, the woman, and the triplets stepped into a dawn none of them ever imagined but one they were finally ready to face together.